Hey everyone, my name is Lincoln, and today I'm going to be explaining comparative advantage and how it works. So what is comparative advantage? Well, in the simplest terms, it's just the ability to produce a good or service more efficiently than your competitors. And for a quick example, we'll take a look at two countries, we'll say Canada and Bangladesh, and we'll assume that they're, for the sake of simplicity, that they're only trading two goods with each other. We'll say wheat and clothes. So let's look at wheat first. Canada is a huge flat country with a lot of fertile flat plains, which makes it easy to grow wheat in huge quantities, and as a result it's very efficient. So the cost drops way down and the price of wheat becomes very cheap, at least compared to other places. But in Bangladesh, growing wheat is a lot more difficult because the country has a much smaller set of borders and most of its space is mangrove rainforest. So growing wheat is much more expensive and inefficient, and the cost is quite high as a result. So, on the other hand, Bangladesh excels at making cheap clothes because it has a very high population and a very cheap cost of labor, and so they can manufacture clothes in huge quantities. Canada, on the other hand, has a much smaller population, at least relative to Bangladesh, and a much higher cost of labor, which makes making t-shirts and clothes over here much more expensive by comparison. So we know that Canada makes cheap wheat and Bangladesh makes cheap clothes. Both of these countries are at their comparative advantage when it comes to manufacturing goods. And if they trade with each other, both countries end up satisfied because they've made exactly what they're good at more efficiently. This is all well and good in theory, of course, but does it actually work in practice? The answer is yes, it does. Here's one of the most interesting examples to think about. There's a rather infamous photo that you can find on the internet showing a cup of pre-sliced pears marinating in a fruit syrup that states on the packaging on the side, grown in Argentina, packed in Thailand. And while this all seems very strange and counterintuitive at first, it all comes back to comparative advantage in the end. So here's how it all works out. As described on the packaging, the pears are grown in Argentina. This is because Argentina is a hot country, especially in the north, where pears can be grown at any time of the year, which means that they are consistent with people's demands. And the pears are usually picked a few weeks ahead of time so that they can ripen in a shipped container on their way to Thailand. Why Thailand? Well, generally the demand for these pre-sliced pears is high in Southeast Asia because they are used often to make traditional fruit salads, which is very important in a country that has infrequent electricity and generally a more limited access to refrigeration. So the pears are shipped from Argentina to Thailand, and they are packed in Thailand using cheap labor, which is also at a comparative advantage to other countries. And since the demand for these pre-sliced pears is lower in the US and Canada compared to those countries, a few extra can be made in Thailand at relatively low cost and then shipped back to the US. So here's where it gets interesting. Because container ships can ship things in such huge volumes, their overall efficiency is very high. So despite the long voyage and seemingly it's burning hundreds of tons of fossil fuels along the way from Argentina to Thailand, the overall cost to ship a pear that distance is just 1.8 cents. And that's how comparative advantage works. It's all about having leverage in the economy by being able to create goods or services at a lower cost than anyone else can offer. Sometimes bigger really is better. I've been Lincoln. Thanks for listening, and have a good day.